So welcome all. This presentation, Publishing Innovative Classroom Interventions via the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning. Just a bit about myself. First of all, I have degrees in industrial engineering and management. So I have both that technical background as well as more of a social science background. Prior to working here at Purdue University, I had some industry experience working as a manufacturing engineer for Harley-Davidson Motor Company, John Deere, and Oshkosh Defense. My academic positions first started at the College of Menominee Nation, which is a federally recognized tribal college in northern Wisconsin. From there, I did a postdoc at Marquette University, as well as a postdoc at Purdue University. And then I was hired on full-time as an assistant professor and was recently promoted to associate professor. Some of the projects that I'm currently working on, that I currently have grant funds for, today I'll be sharing with you about the first project working with Arizona State University, the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Program. And that's something that I'll be sharing with you today. I also have a project working with USAID, the Agency for International Development, working with youth in Ethiopia to bring them entrepreneurship skill development. This summer, excuse me, we just finished up our NSF REU program. If you're not familiar, research experience for undergrads that combines applied energy research with commercialization research. And then the last one is we just finished up this year a project working with Microsoft Power BI, a new software that they have looking at data analysis and data graphics. And we created some curriculum that incorporates entrepreneurship. So today, I'm going to start with motivation for this seminar and where much of this data comes from, or much of what I'm going to share with you comes from. So I'll share some motivation and background. So over the past about 2 years, we've been running an educator professional development program. And this is primarily funded by KEEN. KEEN is the Kern Entrepreneurial Engineering Network, and their program Engineering Unleashed. So it's primarily funded by them, but filtered through ASU, Arizona State University, the School of Engineering, and their Mentorship 360 program. So we were awarded 2 subawards to focus on engineering curriculum development, integrating the entrepreneurial mindset, bio-inspired design, and STEAM. And I'll explain why those 3 in a minute, as well as dissemination as a SoTL conference proceeding. So we combined these awards. We took faculty through about a semester-long cohort to guide them through these 2 processes. And at the end of the experience, our faculty ended with a SoTL-focused conference proceeding. So the reason why, so Kern, the KEEN, the Kern Entrepreneurial Engineering Network, they have a database. It's free to access. And although it is engineering focused, there's a lot of great information that can be applied to different disciplines. But they currently have over 1,800 cards, and a card is an example of a curriculum innovation. There's over 3,500 members that are part of this network, this Engineering Unleashed network, over 340 institutions, and many different discussions supporting these. So our contribution and why we chose to do this or submit a proposal and got accepted is that we believe by combining the entrepreneurial mindset, SoTL, the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning, and VWG, a virtual writing group, can provide greater dissemination to a wider audience using SoTL-focused publications. So what is SoTL? SoTL, the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning, can be considered more of a cycle. And so if we start in the yellow box here, typically as professors, when we go into the classroom, we will teach according to our experience, or we might draw on what's currently in the literature to gain knowledge about teaching and learning. So if we start in that yellow box, we can draw on and contribute to lab and class-based research just to make improvements within our own classroom. And when we implement those, we move into that green circle, and now we're doing scholarly teaching. So we're taking evidence of what's worked in the classroom, and we are now implementing that in our own classrooms. When we move on to the blue box, the scholarship of teaching and learning, here we are sharing it, we're getting feedback through a peer review process, and once it's accepted, then it goes into that orange smaller circle, the publications, and the cycle just keeps going. So our role, the Purdue, what we call Purdue PD, which is professional development, the part one is we show faculty how to develop curriculum, drawing on the literature that integrates the entrepreneurial mindset, bio-inspired design, and STEAM. And then the second part of that is the Purdue PD, professional development part two, is that SoTL dissemination as an ASEE conference proceeding, and ASEE is the American Society of Engineering Education. To support the SoTL, we have faculty from all throughout the US, so none of these faculty were here at Purdue. And so to support that, we have a virtual writing group to support the writing process. There's a lot of benefits to these virtual writing groups, but some of which are the improved accessibility. It promotes accountability. We give our faculty deadlines to meet. It increases a sense of belonging and networking. We're getting feedback from our peers, and it's a cohort style experience. It results in great feedback prior to the submission process to know how to make those improvements, and it can be easily replicated. So in summary, our motivation, KEEN, that current entrepreneurial engineering network, they laid the foundation for EM-focused curriculum dissemination through Engineering Unleashed, which is wonderful. One characteristic of entrepreneurially minded individuals is their ability to effectively communicate a value proposition. And that can be done by writing and submitting a SoTL conference proceeding, which allows engineering faculty the ability to hone their expertise in communicating that value proposition of their educational initiative. So this focus on research dissemination versus curriculum dissemination also has the potential to reach a different audience of engineering faculty, just as it relates to promotion and tenure. And then finally, the virtual nature of the VWG, the virtual writing group, allows connecting with like-minded individuals at institutions throughout the US. So our motivation for this perspectives making approach, and the perspectives meaning those three perspectives, the entrepreneurial mindset, bio-inspired design, and STEAM. So our motivation for these is really, we believe that this is going to present an outcome that focuses on broadening participation. I know we have a diverse group in our audience, but if you're not familiar, in STEM in general and engineering specifically, there's this term called URM, underrepresented minorities. So we have a large group of white males, not so many females, not so many minoritized populations. And so we believe incorporating these three perspectives will help broaden participation and increase interest in engineering. So first of all, the entrepreneurial mindset. The definition of the entrepreneurial mindset is the inclination to discover, evaluate, and exploit opportunities. People with an entrepreneurial mindset think strategically about innovation and continuous improvement, regardless of if they work for a company or are working for a startup. So this skill set is important for everybody. Entrepreneurial mindset is not just about startups, but it's important for new product development or continuous improvement within a company or one's personal life. My colleague and I have written 2 texts as it relates specifically to the entrepreneurial mindset. In 2018, we published Teaching the Entrepreneurial Mindset to Engineers. This was a really big hit. Springer reached back out to us and asked us to write a book that applies to the entire university. And so our second book, released in 2021, Teaching the Entrepreneurial Mindset Across the University, an integrative approach. So we explained how this applies to all disciplines, and examples are included. So the second perspective, bio-inspired design. Bioengineering relates to intersections of biology and engineering across a wide spectrum of disciplines. Bio-inspired design is the process of developing concepts, approaches, and technologies that build and control the way nature does and offers potentially transformative solutions to these problems. So we can see in this image below how biomimicry or bio-inspired design, we borrowed from the bird, the beak, and used that to implement into transportation or vehicles. We can see on the right-hand side the applicability of bioengineering to pretty much every engineering discipline. So the nice thing about bio-inspired design, whether it's bioengineering or biomimicry, is that there's this natural connection to most all engineering disciplines. And so it made it a bit easier for our faculty to draw on this content and pull it into the classroom. The third perspective is STEAM, with a specific focus on the arts. So here we really highlight the term integrated STEAM with respect to art pieces, art processes, or art movements. Here, learning by using math and science content, art and engineering skills, and technology tools to design, invent, and innovate. So integrated humanities and art can focus on language, visual, or performance. And we can see in this image here that integrated STEAM is more of a braid. So we integrate it together rather than having separate silos. So disciplinary content learning is validated within the problem-solving system, and the transfer of new knowledge is immediate, concretizing the learning through application, showing a more expert use of knowledge. So the outcome we're hoping for, and the literature shows, is broadening participation with a focus on assets-based learning. So if you look at the image to the right, we can see on the left-hand side, assets-based learning, the individual says, look at what we've got. So it's leveraging the knowledge, the experience that students have in order to incorporate it into the learning. Versus a deficits-based approach, which is primarily used in STEM and engineering specifically. Often we say, look at what is missing. So often in engineering or STEM in general, we say students are lacking math skills, and because of that, they won't be able to move forward. This is a deficits-based approach. A different approach is the assets-based approach, saying, what do students have? What are these experiences? What can they bring to the table? And looking more at what they do have to offer versus what they don't have to offer. So going to the text, so the assets-based approach, it leverages the students' strengths and assets, and it views students as active co-producers of knowledge. In contrast, the deficits-based approach focuses on students' deficits, shortfalls. It views students as passive vessels to be filled with knowledge. We believe bio-inspired design and STEAM provides a relevant and engaging and transdisciplinary learning space to explore how these holistic assets can support innovation. So some examples of innovative curriculum, and after this, I'll go into these 6 tools. So some examples of innovative curriculum. This is our first example. This is something that was tested out at the College of Menominee Nation, children's book writing for biomedical value creation. So each of these 5 examples will incorporate the entrepreneurial mindset, bio-inspired design, and STEAM. In this particular example, there was 3 core parts. And these lesson plans were adopted. The 2 citations are provided there. I forgot to mention at the beginning, if you want a copy of these slides, please don't hesitate to reach out. So the learning activity, the part 1, the first half of the semester, students completed online discussions, which promoted inquiry and curiosity. They then took that information to do a research presentation, which allowed for the synthesis of information. And then finally, they did book writing, an application of the information. So here's just an example of an online discussion that students replied to, and this was for an Intro to Engineering class. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, biomedical engineering engineers integrate foundational engineering methods with the medical sciences, so students get some insight into what a biomedical engineer is. The following week, they may have looked at what is a nuclear engineer, what is an industrial engineer. Again, the purpose of this was to get students informed about what discipline they might choose when they finish the degree. And so at the very end, students have to explain, search the internet to find a commercially available biomedical engineering focused innovation that they think, a design that they think is especially innovative. They have to explain the product and why they think it's innovative. And then select a peer's post, compare and contrast your own to a peer's post. So they did this several times with different areas. They then did a research presentation summarizing career opportunities, famous underrepresented heroes, research and design innovations, software and technology applications, and educational requirements. And then they went into the book writing process following the hero's journey. It's important to keep in mind, and you'll see an example here on the right, there's a few takeaways. First of all, using Amazon Kindle Direct Publishing, this is a free platform where students could upload their books and create some images that goes with the book. Here's an example of a book, Biomedical Engineering, Ethan Eagle and the Prosthetic Leg. So we incorporated the Menominee culture into this book, which you can see on the right-hand side. On the left-hand side of the book image, you can see the lead authors, and these are students, an illustrator, also a student, and then the editors. This was a 3-faculty team. So the first editor guided students through the book writing process. His background is the humanities. The second editor, Kelly Shelberg, her background is K-12 education or K-5 education. So she helped ensure that the language was appropriate for our age, our target age level, which was grade 4. And then my role in the process was just to ensure the engineering content was correct. So an example here is infographic design. So I'm going to share 4 examples. This next one, infographic design using artificial intelligence and biomedical imaging. Canva is also a free tool. All these examples, free tools in education. Free is a good word. So here we assign students to select an infographic. There's 4 different infographics. We've published this information in our book if you're looking for more information. But here's just some example assignments. Students can do a comparison infographic, statistical infographic, timeline infographic, or process infographic. As an example, as it relates to the first one, the comparison, we ask students to create an infographic which provides an unbiased ethical comparison of diagnostic biomedical imaging versus the traditional diagnostic approaches. So these are all related to the biomedical imaging. Here's just some examples. And if students search the internet, they can find lots of examples under Google Images. But here's some examples also pulled from the internet that we've shared with our students. Example 3 is pitching a biomimicry inspired design innovation using video production. So as you can see from this image, the bottom one, we provide students with a Mad Libs type fill in the blank, and then they convert that to a PowerPoint, a slideshow using voice narration. Save it as a video, upload it to YouTube. Again, a free tool. So the learning activity, we explained to students the benefit of an elevator pitch, which we can see in the image below. Students are introduced to a fill in the blank sheet. I would be glad to share those sheets with you. Students would work individually or in teams to convert this to a 3-minute video pitch. And we have information, citation that explains this assignment as well. So this is what our sheet looks like. And we describe this as an all-purpose form for promoting innovation and change. We first start with the need. Why is there a need for it? We then go to the value proposition, moving to the upper right, how does it work? And then what we need. There's a great video that's associated with this that we have students first fill in the sheet by watching the video, and then students start to understand the framework for completing the video. So the video creation, we give students the option. They can either use PowerPoint, voice narration and converting to a video, or some students like to use a different software like Prezi. That's no problem. The last example I'm going to show here is weekly online discussions. And again, these are examples of innovative, what we see as innovative curriculum that has worked for us in the past, and we encourage others to do as well. So weekly online discussions, these are our recommendations, that there's a learning objective, an initial prompt, and a response prompt. And we recommend doing this on a weekly basis so students get into the habit of it. As an assessment, we recommend an initial prompt 6 points, the response prompt 4 points. As long as they respond to it, they're good to go, and using a minimum word count. Other things to consider is large class sizes, consider breaking down into smaller groups, and then assigning discussion roles if there is a large class size. So here's just an example of an initial discussion prompt about biomedical engineers. We ask students to respond. They select 2 peer posts and comment on potential opportunities to improve the innovation and why customers would desire the improvement. And then this is one related to the EpiPen. So typically we'll provide a video or some other resource that students can read or look at, and then a very straightforward response prompt. Okay, so now that you know some examples of what we're talking about with respect to innovative curriculum, now I'll walk you through these 3 phases or 6 tools that we've tested and have worked out for us. And there's a note up top that we are currently working with the graphic designer to finalize the document. So if you'd like a copy, please send me an email. So again, we did this in a cohort style. We had each semester anywhere from 8 to 14 participating. They went through these 3 phases. Phase 1, developing that new innovative curriculum. To guide them through this process, we use a teaching blueprint and a peer feedback tuning protocol. In phase 2, we implement new innovative curriculum and assess. And so we guide them by using 2 tools here. Tool number 3, the assessment of student learning, and then a curriculum template to document what they've done. And then the final phase, that drafting the manuscript to disseminate the findings. So tool number 5, we use a very structured approach to the virtual writing groups. And then tool number 6 is that SoTL template. So first of all, this is an outline of what our semester typically looks like. And this was from this last May semester. So we start in January with some initial workshops that we do just to go over some of this content. What does some of this stuff mean? We then have them book one-on-one meetings with myself and another facilitator. So that green part is phase 1, phase 2. They develop the curriculum and they implement and assess it. So within 8 weeks of the semester, they need to do those first 2 parts. And then the second half of the semester is that phase 3, writing up that SoTL proceeding. So you can see this is what it's a very accountable, very recognized pace that we use with some space in between. So phase 1 is developing the new innovative curriculum. To help guide our participants, we established this, what we call a teaching blueprint. And this teaching blueprint follows the backwards course design. So what you can see in that first gray box, we identify a learning goal, then learning objectives, learning activity, and learning assessment. In the 4 boxes, we have what we call our curriculum design essentials. So specific for this program, we want our participants to incorporate EM, the entrepreneurial mindset, STEAM, and bio-inspired design. And so this is more or less a checklist or someplace where they can write in notes to ensure that they've covered these 3 aspects. We also require our participants to incorporate professional skill development. So in these projects or assignments that they're implementing into the classroom, there needs to be an opportunity for the students to collaborate. So they should be on teams because innovation is very rarely done in isolation. And there needs to be an opportunity for students to do some communication. So this could be a report at the end, it could be a video, it could be these online discussions, but improving those communication skills. Number 3, mindset cultivation. So students need to be provided an opportunity to practice, reflect, and gain feedback throughout the curriculum. And then finally, number 4 is that teaching with intention. So we want to cultivate a supportive environment, promote value identification, and encourage self-efficacy development. And that last box is that backwards curriculum design, where there's an alignment of learning goals, learning objective, learning activity, and learning assessment. On the right-hand side, there's a peer mentoring tool. And so tool number 2 is a peer feedback tuning protocol. Again, it's very structured. There's 6 steps. There's a participant, when they have an idea for the curriculum intervention, it starts where they have 2 minutes to present and share it to the audience, and that's just our cohort group. And then people in the audience, the other participants, go through clarifying questions, silently reflect on the feedback and think about what they could provide. And then they go through I notice and I wonder feedback. And then finally, the presenter does a debrief and spends that last minute saying, this is what I hear, this is what I think I can incorporate. Next, phase 2, implement new innovative curriculum and assess. On the left-hand side, tool number 3, every participant, every faculty that we had incorporated this into their classroom and in its assessment of student learning. It's meant to be open-ended. And so students have to reply in a qualitative manner by writing at least 200 words narrative. And this way, this provides data for our participants to do thematic analysis, which goes into that SoTL conference proceeding. Here's some example questions. We use both photo voice as well as open-ended questions. If you're not familiar with the photo voice technique, there's 2 key parts, photo and voice. So photo voice allows students to have greater participation in the interpretation of what they're trying to communicate to the researcher. And so here with photo voice, students have to upload not only a picture, but also a narrative supporting that picture. So the photo being the picture, the narrative being the voice. As the saying goes, a picture speaks 1,000 words. So this helps us get at a much richer understanding of what the students felt about completing the assignment. On the right-hand side, tool number 4 is a curriculum template. And so here, this is the content. All of this curriculum, the new innovative curriculum, is uploaded to engineeringunleashed.com. And so it gives them the information that they need to upload, but it also allows them to document the methods section of the SoTL, the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning. So much of what goes into that card online also goes into the methods section. And so they pretty much have that documented. The 2 remaining tools come out in phase 3. And so here they draft a manuscript to disseminate the findings. Tool number 5 is another peer mentoring tool. This is our very structured approach to the virtual writing group. So when we show up, we have 1 facilitator, such as myself, and then 3 participants. And that's how every virtual writing group is. They run for 90 minutes, and each participant gets 30 minutes to obtain feedback. Each participant leads their own 30-minute section. So they first ask, are there any clarifying questions? In round 2, the others participating provide positive feedback. In round 3, the author might have specific requests. Maybe they'll have 2 images. Which image did you like better? Are there any missing citations? And then round 4 is just any final feedback that the group can offer. Tool 6 is the template that we use for the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning. So here, in many cases, disciplinary faculty are not trained in teaching or Scholarship of Teaching and Learning or education research. And so we just give them a big picture and outline, which is shown here, saying this is what typically goes in the intro. This is what typically goes in the lit review. As well as suggested quantity of citations, just to make things a bit easier. So the results, and I just have a few slides. So what does this look like? So what we see on the right-hand side, we've collected data. We did a retrospective post and pre. Retrospective post and pre, you can see the results on the right-hand side. This was for the first 8 weeks where they just learn about how to develop curriculum. And implement it and assess. And these are all in the retrospective post and pre. We ask them after, where were you before? Where are you now? These are all statistically significant learning gains. And then for the second part, the SoTL, the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning, and writing that up. These all have significantly statistic learning gains. So the impact. There's a total across 4 semesters, 30 papers were completed. And so we show from the spring all the way through spring of 2022 to spring of 2023 for the American Society of Engineering Education Conference. 12 papers were submitted and all 12 were accepted. And so also a total of 30 cards were uploaded to Engineering Unleashed. All righty, we're at 30 minutes. I'm going to open it up here for questions. And then of course, please connect if you want access to these slides or whenever we have the PDF document finished for all the tools, I'd be glad to send them your way with the citation for it. But otherwise, it'd be great to connect on LinkedIn, Twitter, or reach out for any reason. So now I'll open it up for questions.
Thank you, Dr. Bozeman. Excellent presentation. How did you get the buy-in from your faculty? Because you mentioned that faculty are discipline experts, but they are not, they may have PhDs, but not have formal education in teaching and learning,
Yeah, it's a great question, especially when teaching is not always favored or recognized in the promotion and tenure process. So with this particular program, we received funding and each of our participants received $1,500 to complete the program. That being said, what we're finding out afterwards and talking to people is that they would have done this without the payment. And so being able to learn this very structured process for drafting scholarship of teaching and learning articles, now they've just repeated the process and are keeping it going. But yes, the incentive was $1,500 in order to, that's what we provided our participants.
I think this is just fantastic curriculum development, relevant, meaningful with students as co-producers. So how was the data kept when curriculum development was being done? Because we use so many devices. Did you have like a records management system, some structure? You had the templates, was it like Google Forms or shared Google Docs or?
That's a great question. So we started off our first semester with just email, and then we quickly switched to Google Classroom because that's a free tool that we could get set up. Unfortunately, at Purdue, our learning management system, to get access to it for outside participants, because these were all participants from different universities, it's a bit difficult. And so we use Google Classroom and Google Drive for storing all of these documents. Currently, the toolkit with the 6 different tools is available via Google Drive, or I can send it via email if anybody's interested in that.
So producing these cards or case studies is publishing. It's a editing process. How you mentioned, like even for children's books, you had 3 different types of editors, one from humanities and you, the engineering expert. So both level, when students are writing and the publishing of this case study or the story or the best practice or this card, this your innovative, who did the editing? Like how was the full editing? Because that's really refining. That's knowledge is innovation. How did you do it?
Yeah, so for those books specifically, and all 13 books are currently available on Amazon.com. So there's 8 engineering books and then 5 renewable energy books, just to get students interested in those. But for the illustrator, we had a student illustrator that she showed us some of her drawings, and she was the illustrator for all 13 of those books.
So this practice, this innovative model for students as co-producers and entrepreneurship across the university, which you have developed, how is it being done across all disciplines? Like, there are always early adopters, engineering. Is it being replicated, scaled up across other disciplines?
So what we see is the biggest group of interest for entrepreneurship curriculum and learning comes out of the business school, and naturally, because entrepreneurship does typically reside within the business school. So that's where we see the biggest interest by students, or access to this education by students. I would say the next most obvious place is engineering, just because engineering does a lot of design and new product development. So there's that more obvious natural connection to entrepreneurship and innovation. But where we're seeing it a lot as well is in the arts. And because the term starving artists, right? So artists do a lot of having to sell, and they need to have those business skill backgrounds in the entrepreneurship. And so now we're just seeing it start to explode across the university. And many universities are establishing minors in entrepreneurship so that any student, regardless of their bachelor's or their main disciplinary intent, any student can now get access to that. And that's pretty standard across most universities. Whether there's minors or they have accelerator startup programs, tools that students can access if they want to look into a startup or just gaining those skills for when they go into a company. But engineering is by far the next discipline outside of business school or management, but then other schools or other disciplinary areas are picking up as well.
What are the challenges you faced when you were working with faculty?
I think our biggest challenge when we have the perspectives making approach, the biggest challenge was not so much the entrepreneurial mindset or the bio-inspired design. That biggest challenge for our participants to understand was the arts, and to move beyond maybe a research poster as an art project. And so that's where my colleague and I, as facilitators of the program, we spent most of our efforts was helping them discover how to bring in the arts. An example of one of our participants that was teaching a manufacturing course, so just introducing students to all the different manufacturing processes and the machines, like a CNC machine and a router. He had his students look at the history of how these machines have innovated over time and explain that history according to biomimicry, so tying in the bio-inspired design and biology and bioengineering, and then share that content via a podcast. And so that podcast is where the arts was brought in. But that's where we've had the biggest challenge with our faculty, is just getting to think a little bit differently about the arts and how arts can be incorporated, even though a podcast may not have that natural obvious art from our participants, but it very well fit.
And now, what challenges did you face or your faculty faced when they were working with students? Because there could be such a variety of students. When you began, you said that in engineering, it is this underrepresented. You've got international students, and each countries we have, wherever we are in the world, there are, marginalized students.
Yep.
What challenges were faced when you were working, faculty working with students?
So one of our biggest challenges that our faculty faced with the students was getting them to see this as value. So often, I think our engineering students, because they get so much of it in the classroom, they think formulas and having black and white answers and knowing something that is correct, a calculation, or so often students, they're just familiar, that's how the process works. And so I think our faculty struggled with communicating to the students that this creativity can be beneficial and is beneficial. And so incorporating the arts can help students. And so I think the faculty struggled with how to communicate to the students, even though afterwards the reflection and feedback from the students by far showed they appreciated it. I think it was just getting students started and getting them engaged and hooked on the value that the project could bring in advance. But it ended up working in the end, because most students recognized after they completed the project or the assignment that it was really kind of fun, something different to do that brings in, the business side of things and biology and the arts, and how that can be valued in the workplace.
So whose vision was it to make it beautifully so much interdisciplinary? to bring all these artistic mind and the technical. You began with the introduction, like you had all these skills, like because these are different thinking. How was that? Could you tell us a little bit more? How did this interdisciplinary collaboration or merger within each individual happen? Within the faculty, within the student.
Well, partially, we leveraged our own backgrounds. And so I've been doing quite a bit of research and faculty professional development specific to the entrepreneurial mindset. My colleague on this project, Katie Sherry, she's got a PhD in curriculum and instruction, and her company is Educati, and she does quite a bit with STEAM education development. And so she gives quite a few seminars and workshops, and she travels really to focus on incorporating that arts. Her background, a bachelor's degree in physics as well as arts, and so her background is really fascinating. And then the third one, Caroline Jar, her background is really in that biology. And so bringing that bio-inspired design. And so as we're brainstorming and thinking, well, we can bring in our own backgrounds and our own experiences, but then because we've worked so closely together over the past several years, that's where the inspiration for this perspectives making and these three different approaches come into play. That being said, the funder of this, at a minimum, we needed the entrepreneurial mindset, because the funder of this was the Kern Entrepreneurial Engineering Network. And so we needed to incorporate the entrepreneurial mindset into it. So we brainstormed, how can we do this in a unique or different way? And that's why we brought in the STEAM as well as bio-inspired design, because when you force yourself within scope to come up with an innovative curriculum, having a scope really helps versus just saying, come up with something innovative. And so having that scope helps. And we know research tells us that this does reach a wider variety of audiences. And having that innovative curriculum is necessary in order to document via the scholarship of teaching and learning. So we had to make sure that we had a foolproof way of getting to innovative curriculum that can support or justify a contribution to the literature.
In terms of faculty professional development, you mentioned the early adopters were entrepreneurs, business management, engineering. So you met your goal of entrepreneurship. Early adopters, what else was the profile of these early adopters within these? You mentioned the disciplines. Was it like a new professor? Was it somebody who's just retiring? Because who are your early faculty adopters? Apart from giving the 1,500, which is not much, honorarium for participating, because who are the early adopters? What's their profile? Within these disciplines of your faculty?
So we haven't collected data of who has interest, but anecdotally speaking, who I do see having a greater interest in incorporating the entrepreneurial mindset is people who have worked in industry. And so they are familiar, and this is prior to joining academia. So all of our participants are engineering professors throughout the United States. But what we see is a bigger group are people, like I said, who have that background. They've worked in industry, whether it's for a few years or several years, and they understand that sometimes what we do in the classroom doesn't always align with what happens in industry. What we also see is that there's a large group of internationally born people. And I think where that comes in is entrepreneurship and economic development is important throughout the world. And so what we see is a lot of interest, I think, from people that they're just interested in. And if there's knowledge that they can bring back to share with people within their home countries or pass along to the students, that economic development or entrepreneurship, even as professors, if we can do, a side hustle. And this is by participating in this program and better understanding what entrepreneurship is about and in the entrepreneurial mindset. Not only does that impact their students, but that gives them some important knowledge that they can apply to themselves or they can pass on to their children or their neighbors, or things that they're just interested in because they understand the importance of it.
So I think it's really excellent. It's workplace skills is what entrepreneurship is over here, and industry, like the industry connection, and
Yep.
international brain. That's
Mhm.
is what brought abundance to this project. I
Yep.
think.
Yep.
So I do have Dandy and Randy over here. You're welcome to ask questions. Go